You know that moment when your entire world shifts on its axis? When everything you thought you knew crumbles in an instant. I'm standing here today, looking out at my new life, and I still can't believe it all started with a $7 breakfast and a man everyone assumed was nobody. But let me paint you a picture first. Picture the most arrogant, condescending person you've ever met. Now multiply that by 10. That was my ex-fiancé, Richard, standing there in his $1,000 suit, looking at this elderly homeless man like he was something stuck to his shoe. Richard's face, when he realized who that man really was, the color drained from his cheeks, so fast I thought he might faint right there on the marble steps of the mansion. The same mansion he'd been bragging about buying for months. The old man just smiled, pulled out a set of keys that probably cost more than Richard's car, and said 6 words that still give me chills. I believe this house is mine, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began. 3 weeks ago, on what started as the most humiliating morning of my life. I was running late. Again. But this time it wasn't my fault. Well, not entirely. Richard had insisted we meet his parents for brunch at the country club at exactly 10 a.m. "Don't embarrass me, Emma," he'd said the night before, adjusting his cufflinks in that pretentious way of his. "My father is finally warming up to you, and we can't afford any mishaps." Mishaps. That's what he called my humanity. I was speed-walking down Fifth Avenue, my heels clicking frantically on the sidewalk, when I saw him. An elderly man, maybe in his 70s, sitting on a bench outside Murphy's Diner. His clothes were worn and patched, his gray beard slightly unkempt, and he was staring longingly through the window at people eating breakfast inside. But it wasn't the typical aggressive stare you sometimes see. This was different, gentle, almost wistful, like he was remembering something precious. Our eyes met for just a moment, and he smiled. Not the practiced smile of someone asking for money, but a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. Eyes that seemed oddly familiar, though I couldn't place where I'd seen them before. I should have kept walking. I was already 15 minutes late, and Richard would be furious. But something about this man stopped me in my tracks. Maybe it was the way he sat, with dignity despite his circumstances. Or maybe it was the small, faded photo he was clutching in his weathered hands. "Good morning," I said, approaching his bench. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" He looked surprised that someone had spoken to him. "Oh, yes, miss. Every day above ground is a blessing." His voice was cultured, educated, not what you'd expect from someone in his situation. "Are you hungry?" I asked. I was just about to grab something quick before. "Oh, no, miss, I couldn't possibly." "Please," I interrupted gently. "It would be my pleasure." Something in his eyes shifted, a flicker of gratitude mixed with something else I couldn't identify. "Well, if you insist. But only if you'll join me. I haven't had a proper breakfast conversation in, well, a very long time." That's how I found myself 25 minutes late to brunch, sitting across from this homeless man in Murphy's Diner, sharing what turned out to be one of the most meaningful conversations of my life. His name was William, he told me, and he'd been on the streets for about 6 months. Circumstances, he said vaguely when I asked how he'd ended up there. Life has a way of testing us when we least expect it. As we talked, I noticed things. The way he held his fork, with the refined manners of someone raised with privilege. How he knew about art and literature, casually mentioning authors I'd barely heard of. And that photograph he kept touching, a picture of a young woman holding a baby, both smiling radiantly. "Your family?" I asked gently. His eyes grew misty. "My daughter and grandson. I haven't seen them in years. Sometimes I come to this part of town hoping I might catch a glimpse of them." "What happened?" "Pride," he said simply. "The most expensive mistake a man can make. I lost everything because I was too proud to apologize when I should have. Too proud to admit I was wrong. And now," he gestured to his worn clothes. I wanted to ask more, but my phone was buzzing incessantly. Richard. I knew he was furious, but somehow, sitting there with William, it didn't seem as important as it had an hour ago. "Miss Emma," William said. I told him my name over coffee. "You have a kind heart. Don't let anyone make you believe that kindness is weakness. In my experience, it's the strongest thing a person can possess." I paid for breakfast, $7.63, including tip, and gave him my business card. "If you ever need anything," I said. "A meal, someone to talk to, anything." He studied the card carefully, then looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Emma Richardson," he said slowly. "Richardson." He paused. "Are you engaged to a Richard Morrison by any chance?" I was surprised. "Yes, how did you?" "Just curious," he said quickly, tucking the card into his pocket. "You seem too good for the circles that name usually runs in." By the time I arrived at the country club, Richard was beyond furious. He was sitting with his parents at their usual table, prime location with a view of the golf course, and I could see the storm brewing in his eyes from across the dining room. "Emma!" His voice carried that particular tone that made every conversation stop. "Where have you been?" "We've been waiting for 45 minutes. His mother, Patricia Morrison, a woman who could freeze hell with her stare, looked me up and down with obvious disdain. "Richard, dear, perhaps Emma doesn't understand the importance of punctuality in our social circles." I slid into my chair, trying to ignore the stares from other diners. "I'm sorry, You're sorry." Richard's voice was getting louder. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? My father came all the way from the city for this brunch, and you show up looking." He gestured at my appearance. I glanced down. My white blouse had a small coffee stain. William had accidentally bumped the table when an ambulance passed by, triggering some kind of memory that made him jump. My hair was slightly mussed from the wind, and I probably smelled like the diner. I was helping someone who needed helping. Richard's laugh was cruel. "Let me guess. Another one of your charity cases. Emma, when are you going to understand that these people are not our problem?" His father, Charles Morrison, leaned forward. Charles was old money, the kind of man who believed his net worth determined his worth as a human being. "Son, you need to help Emma understand her priorities. When you're married, she'll be representing our family name." I was just buying breakfast for an elderly man who... "A homeless man," Richard interrupted, somehow knowing exactly what had happened. "You were feeding some vagrant while keeping us waiting. Do you see how this looks, Emma? What if someone we know had seen you?" The conversation around nearby tables had definitely stopped now. I felt heat rising in my cheeks, not from embarrassment for myself, but from fury at how he was speaking about William. "His name is William," I said quietly, "and he's a human being." Patricia Morrison laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, how noble!" "Darling, you can't save every stray that crosses your path. It's simply not practical." "Emma!" Richard leaned closer, his voice low but venomous. This bleeding heart routine might have been charming when we were dating, but we're talking about marriage now. About our future. About joining two respected families. You can't keep embarrassing us like this. I looked around the table at these three people: Richard, who I'd somehow agreed to marry, his mother, who spoke about human beings like they were stray animals, and his father, who measured everything in terms of social status and financial gain. "Maybe," I said slowly, "you should ask yourselves why showing basic human kindness is embarrassing to you." The silence that followed was deafening. Charles Morrison set down his coffee cup with deliberate precision. "Emma, I think you need to understand something. The Morrison name carries weight in this city. We associate with the right people, support the right causes, and maintain the right image. Feeding vagrants on street corners doesn't align with any of those things." "Right causes." I stood up, my voice finally finding its strength. "Like the charity auction you hosted last month, where you spent more on champagne than you actually donated." Richard grabbed my wrist. "Emma, sit down. You're making a scene." "No," I said, pulling free. "I think I'm finally seeing clearly." I walked out of that country club with my head high, even though I could hear the whispers following me. But something had shifted inside me during that conversation with William. His words kept echoing. "Don't let anyone make you believe that kindness is weakness." 3 days passed before Richard called. I spent that time thinking, really thinking, about the life I'd been building. Or rather, the life that was being built for me. "Emma, we need to talk," Richard said when I answered. I spoke to Pastor Williams. He has an opening for our wedding next month, but we need to confirm today. "Richard, I've been thinking." "Good." "Thinking is fine, but we can't let emotion cloud our judgment. What happened at brunch was unfortunate, but we can move past it. My mother has agreed to help you with some refinements." Social coaching, if you will. Social coaching. Code for teaching me to ignore suffering when it was inconvenient. I don't think I need. Emma, be realistic. You're a social worker from Queens. I'm offering you entry into society that most people only dream of. But that comes with expectations. I thought about William, sitting on that bench with such dignity despite having lost everything. I thought about the warmth in his eyes when he talked about his daughter and grandson. I thought about how he'd clutched that photo like it was the most precious thing in the world. What if I told you I'd rather have coffee with that homeless man than dinner at your parents' country club? Richard was quiet for a long moment. I'd say you need to grow up. That afternoon, I found myself walking back to Murphy's Diner. I'm not sure what I was hoping for. Maybe just to see William again, to make sure he was okay. But his bench was empty. I went inside and asked Mike, the owner, if he'd seen the elderly homeless man who'd been sitting outside. Oh, William! Mike smiled. Yeah, he comes by sometimes. Interesting guy. You know, he always pays for other people's meals when he thinks no one's looking. Says he remembers what it's like to be hungry. He pays for meals. I was confused. But he's homeless. Mike shrugged. I don't ask too many questions. But yeah, he's got money. Not much, but he shares what he has. There's something different about that guy. The way he carries himself, you know? Like he's been somewhere important. I left my number with Mike, asking him to call if William came by. It was silly maybe, but I couldn't shake the feeling that our paths were supposed to cross again. 2 weeks later, the call came from Richard's assistant, not Richard himself. The Morrison family had acquired a new property, a massive estate in the Hamptons, and they were hosting an exclusive gathering to celebrate. Mr. Morrison specifically requested your attendance. The assistant said in a tone that suggested this was a great honor I should be grateful for. The invitation itself arrived by courier the next day. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering, the works. An evening of celebration at the Whitmore estate. Black tie required. I almost didn't go. Richard and I hadn't spoken since our phone call, and I wasn't sure I wanted to continue whatever we'd been building together. But something about the name, Whitmore Estate, nagged at me. The night of the party, I borrowed a black dress from my neighbor and took the train out to the Hamptons. The estate was magnificent, a sprawling mansion with manicured gardens, a circular driveway lined with luxury cars, and enough windows to light up half the neighborhood. Richard met me at the entrance, looking handsome in his tuxedo, but somehow smaller than I remembered. Emma, you look beautiful. I'm glad you came. Richard, we need to talk about... Later, he said quickly, guiding me inside. I want you to meet someone first. The previous owner's son is here tonight. Bit of a sad story, actually. The old man lost everything and disappeared. But business is business, right? The mansion was filled with exactly the type of people I'd expected. Wealthy, well-dressed, and seemingly competing to see who could sound the most important. Richard led me through the crowd, introducing me as his fiancée to people who looked through me like I was invisible. The best part, Richard was saying to a group near the fireplace, is that we got this place for a fraction of its value. The previous owner defaulted on some debts, and we swooped in. Charles has a good eye for opportunity. Charles Morrison appeared beside us, champagne flute in hand. Emma, glad you could make it. What do you think of our new acquisition? I looked around at the opulent rooms, crystal chandeliers, oil paintings, marble floors that probably cost more than I made in a year. It was beautiful, but there was something sad about it too. Like it was missing the people who'd made it a home. It's impressive, I said. 43 rooms, Patricia Morrison announced, appearing with her usual perfectly composed smile. The previous owner clearly had expensive tastes. Pity he couldn't afford to maintain them. Something twisted in my stomach. What happened to the family who lived here? Charles shrugged. Business troubles. The old man had some sort of falling out with his daughter years ago. She was his only heir. When he couldn't pay his debts, he just vanished. Left everything behind. Probably living in a cardboard box somewhere, Richard added with a laugh that made my skin crawl. I excused myself and walked out onto the terrace, needing air. The garden was lit by string lights, and I could see the ocean in the distance. It was the kind of view people dreamed about, but all I could think about was William, sitting on that bench, clutching his photograph. Beautiful evening, isn't it? I turned, and my heart stopped. William was standing there in an impeccably tailored tuxedo, his gray hair neatly trimmed, his beard shaped and clean. But it was definitely him, those same kind eyes, the same gentle smile. "William," I whispered. "Hello, Emma. I've been hoping to see you again." "But, what are you doing here?" He gestured toward the mansion. "This is my home. Or rather, it was my home for 37 years. I felt the world tilt beneath my feet." "Your home?" "William Whitmore," he said, extending his hand formally. "I believe you've been enjoying my hospitality this evening." The pieces started falling into place with sickening clarity. Whitmore Estate. William Whitmore. The photograph of his daughter and grandson. The way he'd asked about Richard Morrison. "You're the previous owner," I breathed. "Was?" "Past tense. I made some poor business decisions, trusted the wrong people, and let pride keep me from asking my daughter for help. When the debts became overwhelming, I chose to walk away rather than burden her with my mistakes." "But why were you living on the streets? Why didn't you?" "Because I needed to understand," he said quietly. "I needed to see how the other half lives. I needed to remember what it felt like to be invisible, to be dismissed, to be considered worthless. I've spent 6 months learning lessons I should have learned decades ago." We stood there in silence for a moment, the sound of the party drifting out from inside. Laughter, clinking glasses, the self-satisfied chatter of people celebrating their good fortune at someone else's expense. "Emma," William said, "do you know why I came tonight?" I shook my head. "Because my grandson finally found me. He's been looking for months, ever since he learned about the foreclosure. Turns out, my daughter never stopped loving me. She's been trying to track down who bought the estate, hoping to buy it back." "Your grandson?" William smiled. "David Whitmore. He's a lawyer now, a very good one. He's been working on some irregularities in the sale of his property." Inside the mansion, I heard a commotion, raised voices, people moving quickly. William checked his watch. "Right on time," he murmured. "William, what's happening?" "Justice, my dear. You see, when my business partner embezzled from our accounts and disappeared, I had proof. But I was too ashamed to use it, too proud to expose how foolish I'd been. I let everyone believe I was simply a failed businessman." The voices inside were getting louder now. I could hear Richard's voice above the rest, angry and confused. 6 months on the streets taught me something valuable," William continued. "The measure of a person isn't how they treat those who can help them. It's how they treat those who can't. Your fiancé and his family have shown me exactly who they are." "Mr. Whitmore!" A young man in an expensive suit came rushing onto the terrace. "Everything's in place." "Ah, David!" William's face lit up with pure joy. "Emma Richardson, I'd like you to meet my grandson, David Whitmore." David shook my hand warmly. "Ms. Richardson, my grandfather has told me wonderful things about you. Thank you for showing him such kindness." "I don't understand what's happening," I said. William placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "What's happening, my dear, is that sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. You see, the Morrison family purchased this estate with money they obtained through some very questionable means. My grandson has been investigating their business practices for months." "Grandfather," David said urgently, "the FBI agents are here." "FBI agents?" "Emma," William said, "I need you to know something. That morning when you bought me breakfast, when you sat with me and treated me like a human being, that was the day I decided to fight back. You reminded me that there are still good people in this world worth fighting for." The sound of shattering glass came from inside the mansion, followed by shouting. Through the windows, I could see men in FBI jackets moving through the crowd. "The Morrisons have been running a sophisticated fraud scheme for years," David explained quickly. "Shell companies, tax evasion, money laundering. They've been buying distressed properties with dirty money, including this one." "Charles Morrison!" A voice boomed from inside. "You're under arrest." William straightened his bow tie. "Shall we go inside? I believe there are some people who owe me an apology." Walking back into that mansion felt like entering an alternate reality. The elegant party had dissolved into chaos. FBI agents were everywhere, guests were being questioned, and in the center of it all stood the Morrison family, all 3 of them in handcuffs. When Charles Morrison saw William, his face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, and then pure terror. That's impossible, he whispered. You're dead. We checked. You're supposed to be dead. William smiled sadly. Reports of my demise were greatly exaggerated, Charles. Though I understand the wishful thinking. Richard was staring at William like he'd seen a ghost, his face pale and his hand shaking. But you're the homeless man. Emma, you said you helped a homeless man. I did help a homeless man, I said quietly. A homeless man who turned out to own the house you've been bragging about buying. Mr. Morrison, one of the FBI agents said, you have the right to remain silent. But Richard couldn't stay silent. This is insane, he shouted, looking around desperately. Emma, tell them you don't know anything about this. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw him clearly for perhaps the first time. This man who had been planning our future, who had told me I needed to change, who had been embarrassed by my basic human decency. You're right, Richard, I said. I don't know anything about your family's crimes, but I know everything I need to know about your character. Patricia Morrison was crying now, actual tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. This is all a mistake. We're respectable people. We don't associate with criminals. Ma'am, the agent said patiently, you are the criminals. William stepped forward, and the entire room seemed to focus on him. Even in handcuffs, the Morrisons couldn't take their eyes off him. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chaos, I want to thank you all for coming to my home tonight. I know this isn't the party you expected, but it's exactly the party I hoped for. He looked directly at Charles Morrison. Charles, do you remember what you told me the day before the foreclosure? You said, business is business, William. Nothing personal. Well, tonight you're learning that sometimes business is very personal indeed. How? Charles whispered. How did you survive out there? The same way thousands of people survive out there every day, William replied. One meal at a time, one kindness at a time. Though I had advantages most don't, I had people like Emma who remembered that homeless people are still people. The FBI agent in charge stepped forward. Mr. Whitmore, we have everything we need. The property will be returned to you within the week, along with compensation for your losses. William nodded. Thank you, Agent Barnes. Though I should mention, I won't be keeping the house. Grandfather. David looked surprised. I've learned something these past few months, William said, looking around the opulent rooms. A house is just walls and furniture. A home is the people in it. This place hasn't been my home since my daughter left. He turned to me. Emma, I have a proposition for you. I was still reeling from everything that had happened. Sir, I'm donating this estate to the city to be converted into a homeless shelter and rehabilitation center. It will need someone to run it. Someone who understands that everyone deserves dignity regardless of their circumstances. Someone with a good heart and practical experience. Interested? I couldn't speak. I just nodded, tears streaming down my face. Richard was staring at us, his mouth open. Emma, you can't be serious. You're going to throw away everything we built together for some charity project. I looked at him one last time. Richard, we didn't build anything together. You tried to rebuild me into someone I'm not. There's a difference. I slipped off my engagement ring and placed it on the marble table between us. I choose kindness. Every time. That was 6 months ago. Today, I'm standing in the same garden where William revealed his identity, but everything is different now. The Whitmore Center opens next week. 43 rooms converted into housing units, counseling offices, job training centers, and a community kitchen that serves anyone who needs a meal. William lives in a small apartment downtown now, close to his daughter and grandson who he's reconciled with. They visit the center regularly, and William still has breakfast at Murphy's Diner every Sunday. But now he sits inside, at his usual table by the window, sharing meals with whoever needs company. The Morrison family is awaiting trial. Richard sends me letters sometimes, asking me to reconsider, promising he's learned from his mistakes. But I've learned something too, that the way someone treats people they think can help them tells you everything you need to know about their character. Mike from Murphy's Diner is our head chef now. Turns out, he'd been feeding homeless people for free for years, long before he met William. Good food shouldn't be a luxury, he told me when I offered him the job. We have 37 residents currently, each one working toward getting back on their feet. Some are dealing with addiction. some with mental health issues, some just with a streak of bad luck. All of them deserve dignity. All of them matter. And William, he's our unofficial grandfather figure, sitting in the common room every evening, listening to stories, offering advice, proving every day that kindness isn't weakness, it's the strongest force in the world. Last week, a young woman came to us, 8 months pregnant and nowhere to go. Her boyfriend had left, her family had turned their backs, and she'd been sleeping in her car. When I sat down to talk with her, she looked at me with the same mixture of hope and desperation I'd seen in William's eyes that morning at the diner. "What's your name?" I asked. "Sarah," she whispered. "And I know what you must think of me, but I think," I interrupted gently, "that you're exactly where you need to be." Her face crumpled with relief, and I thought about that $7 breakfast that changed everything. How a simple act of recognizing someone's humanity had rippled outward in ways I could never have imagined. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that we never know who we're really helping when we choose kindness. That homeless person, that struggling parent, that elderly man sitting alone, they might be someone's grandfather, someone's child, someone's last hope. Or they might be someone who will change your life in ways you never expected. The Morrison family thought they were so clever, taking advantage of a broken old man. They never imagined that old man would find his strength again, or that it would come through the simple act of a stranger treating him with dignity. Sometimes I drive past that country club where Richard humiliated me for helping William. The same people are probably still there, having the same conversations about the right people and the right causes. But they're missing the point entirely. The right cause is standing right in front of us every day. It's the person holding the cardboard sign. It's the elderly woman counting change at the grocery store. It's the teenager aging out of foster care with nowhere to go. It's everyone who's been forgotten by people too busy climbing social ladders to remember their humanity. William keeps that photograph of his daughter and grandson on his desk now, but he's added others. Pictures of our residents, pictures of staff members, pictures of all the people who've helped make the Whitmore Center a place of hope instead of just another beautiful building. "You know," he told me last week, "I thought I lost everything when I lost this house. But I was wrong. I found everything when I lost this house. I found out who I really was underneath, all the money and status and pride. And I found out there are people like you in the world, people who see others as human beings first and everything else second. As for me, I wake up every morning knowing that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm supposed to do. I'm using my social work degree in ways I never imagined, and I'm learning that sometimes the most important education happens on the streets, not in classrooms. Richard was wrong about one thing. I didn't need social coaching to find my place in society. I needed to find the courage to create my own society, built on different values entirely. Every morning, I walk past Murphy's Diner on my way to work. Sometimes William is there, sometimes he's not. But that bench where I first saw him, there's a small plaque on it now, in memory of all those who are invisible. You are seen. You matter. You are loved. The city installed it after hearing our story. They said it was to honor William's transformation, but I think it's really to honor everyone who's ever been dismissed, overlooked, or forgotten. Because here's what the Morrison family never understood. Wealth isn't measured in dollars or square footage or social connections. It's measured in the number of lives you touch, the amount of hope you create, and the love you give freely without expecting anything in return. I'm richer now than I ever could have been as Mrs. Richard Morrison. And it all started with $7.63, and the radical act of treating another human being like they mattered. That's a return on investment no stock market can match. Hey everyone, if this story moved you the way it moved me to tell it, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. These stories of unexpected connections and the power of kindness need to be shared. You never know who might need to hear them today. And please, drop a comment below telling me about a time when a small act of kindness, either given or received, changed your perspective. Have you ever helped someone only to discover they were more than they seemed? Or maybe you've been on the receiving end of unexpected generosity. I read every single comment, and your stories inspire the content I create. Remember, we never know whose life we might change with a simple gesture of humanity. That person you pass on the street, that cashier having a rough day, that elderly neighbor who seems lonely, They all have stories, and they all matter. Until next time, keep choosing kindness. You never know when it might open doors you didn't even know existed.